Hi, I'm John Green. This is Crash Course U.S. History, and today we're going to talk about progressives. No, Stan, progressives, yes. You know, like these guys who used to want to bomb the means of production, but also less radical progressives. Mr. Green, are we talking about like Tumblr progressives where it's half discussions of misogyny and half high contrast images of pizza? Because if so, I can get behind that. Me from the past, your anachronism is showing your internet with green letters on a black screen. But no, the progressive era was not like Tumblr. However, I will argue that it did indirectly make Tumblr and therefore JLog gift sets possible, so that's something. So some of the solutions that progressives came up with to deal with issues of inequality and injustice don't seem terribly progressive today, and also it kind of overlapped with the Gilded Age, and progressive implies like progress, presumably progress toward freedom and justice, which is hard to argue about an era that involved one of the great restrictions of freedom in American history, prohibition. So maybe we shouldn't call it the progressive era at all. I get Stan, whatever, roll the intro. So the Gilded Age was the period when American industrial capitalism came into its own and people like Mark Twain began to criticize its associated problems. Then the progressive era was the age in which people actually tried to solve those problems through individual and group action. As the economy changed, progressives also had to respond to a rapidly changing political system. The population of the US was growing and its economic power was becoming ever more concentrated, and sometimes progressives responded to this by opening up political participation, and sometimes by trying to restrict the vote. The thing is, broad participatory democracy doesn't always result in effective government, he said, sounding like the Chinese National Communist Party. And that tension between wanting to have government for, of, and by the people and wanting to have government that's like good at governing kind of defined the progressive era, and also our era. But progressives were most concerned with the social problems that revolved around industrial capitalist society, and most of these problems weren't new by 1900, but some of the responses were. Companies, and later corporations, had a problem that had been around at least since the 1880s. They needed to keep costs down and profits high in a competitive market. And one of the best ways to do this was to keep wages low, hours long, and conditions appalling. Your basic house help situation. Just kidding, house help didn't get wages. Also, by the end of the 19th century, people started to feel like these large monopolistic industrial combinations, the so-called trusts, were exerting too much power over people's lives. The 1890s saw federal attempts to deal with these trusts, such as the Sherman Antitrust Act, but overall, the federal government wasn't where most progressive changes were made. For instance, there was muckraking, a form of journalism in which reporters would find some muck and rake it. Mass circulation magazines realized they could make money by publishing exposés of industrial and political abuse, so they did. Oh, it's time for the mystery document? I bet it involves muck. The rules here are simple. I guess the author of the mystery document, I'm either correct or I get shocked. Let a man so much as scrape his finger pushing a truck in the pickle rooms, and all the joints in his fingers might be eaten by the acid one by one. Of the butchers and floormen, the beef boners and trimmers, and all those who used knives, you could scarcely find a person who had the use of his thumb. Time and time again, the base of it had been slashed till it was a mere lump of flesh against which the man pressed the knife to hold it. They would have no nails. They had worn them off, pulling hides. Wow. Well, now I am hyper aware of and grateful for my thumbs. They are just in excellent shape. I am so glad, Stan, that I am not a beef boner at one of the meat packing factories written about in the jungle by Upton Sinclair. No shot for me. Oh, Stan, I can only imagine how long and hard you've worked to get the phrase beef boner into this show, and you finally did it. Congratulations. By the way, just a little bit of trivia. The Jungle was the first book I ever read that made me vomit.
Okay, hi everyone. So that's the setting for today's exercise. But before we do that, I want to talk about my first responses to your first drafts of your midterm paper. And but again, I'll forget if we don't do this, and that is to do the attendance for the class. So we go to week 7 and add smart attendance, and your smart attendance number is 649. 649 is your smart attendance number. So let me put that in the chat box, 649, and there you go. 649 is your smart attendance number for today. So back to the comments I wanted to put on regarding your midterm paper. Okay, so let's go back to the assignments and look at the midterm paper and remind you that you must use and cite information from at least 3 different chapters, from chapters 1 through 12 of the Zinn textbook. So I think there was like 1 or 2 people, again, that they didn't use and cite information from three different chapters, from chapters 1 through 12. They might have cited information twice from chapter 1, but that's still just 1 chapter, okay? So if you want to get a good grade, you must also use and cite information from at least 3 different chapters from chapters 1 through 12 of the book. And again, the final draft of the book, not including the footnotes, not including the title, your name, not including any of that, just the text of the paper is, about 550 words, give or 500 words plus or minus 10%. And again, the reason why I ask you to do that is because when a writer has a specific limit on the number of words that he or she can use, that requirement, that limitation really requires the writer to know exactly what her ideas are that she was trying to express. And that means she has to refine and develop her ideas in order to know what exactly to put in the paper and not put useless or information that's not critically important in the paper. So that means you have to really teach yourself as to what are the ideas that you are trying to express. And if you have to think about how to articulate those ideas by writing them down, then you learn more. And keep in mind, like I say in all of my classes all the time, I am asking you to do what I have to do too. I have to write papers also. I have to write papers, and I have to write good papers that get published if I want to keep this job and get promoted. So I just submitted a paper on Friday, right, that I think is really good. And I submitted that paper for review, and the reviewer, the journal states on their website in terms of the requirements for submitting a paper that the paper may not be longer than 8,000 words. So I had to go through and specify what my ideas were, decide what exactly, more clearly, what is the focus of my paper in order to meet that 8,000 word limit. I couldn't go beyond it. And that meant I had to really not just, clarify what I'm trying to express. I learn more. You learn more when you have a limitation on the size of the paper, because you have to be very, very clear to yourself what are your ideas and develop them more fully in order to pick specific points from your ideas to put in the paper. Okay? So, almost all journals that publish academic articles, they have a size limit. It might be 10,000 words, might be 8,000 words, but they all have a size limit. There's some that don't, and I do publish with them as well, because I want to develop my ideas and get them down on paper first, but most do. Okay, so and then of course, if you haven't submitted your paper yet, you should do so, and I'll get to it before next week when I'm going to meet individually with each of you to talk about my comments on your paper. And so let me show you where this file, which I uploaded yesterday on the Google Docs. You should go in there and sign up for a time to meet with me next week, starting a week from today, so that we can talk about my comments on your paper. So everybody should go into this file and choose a day and time to meet with me, and then I will send you a Zoom link so that we can talk over the Zoom for half an hour. And I will, of course, record the Zoom meeting, and I will post the link so that you can look at the recording if you want to. You can refer to the recording as well, and I'll put the recording on YouTube as a private recording. And I noticed that one of the nice aspects about YouTube is that they provide language translation. So I think you should be able to translate, or at least you'd be able to see what I say in English words at the bottom of the video tube, at the bottom of the video recording. So so that's the plan. So please go into this file and choose a time to meet with me during not next week, but the week after, week 8. And we have to do something during week 8. The university insists that everybody must do something with their students on week 8, whether give a test or meet with them or something. So we have to meet during week 8 on these individual conference sessions. We will not have regular class during the week 8, okay? Which is, again, one of the reasons why we're meeting now today, even though today's a holiday, because, we have to get through the first half of the Zinn book in order to get through the entire Zinn book by the end of the semester, since this course is an entire course in American history. And all right, so by the way, let's go back and check who has signed up and who has not signed up for a debate. So everybody should sign up for a debate. So far we haven't had a student debate. We don't have one set up for week 7. That's this week, week 8. But then we see, aha, week 10, we start to see people have signed up for a debate. And so if you haven't signed up for a debate, please do so. If you haven't done so far, a lot of students have not yet done so. So please sign up for a debate. And it's unlikely that, I guess, somebody really wants to, they can do it for, well, that's Wednesday is pretty close, but the rest of you who haven't signed up for debate, you're probably going to have to sign up for the second half of the semester here, okay? So please sign up for your debates as part of your exercises and work for this class, okay? And let's now go back to the assignment. So you're then going to meet with me next week individually, and then you're going to revise your paper. Remember, no more than 10% of the midterm essay may consist of quoted text, just like your weekly paragraphs. No more than 10% of the paper may consist of quoted text, right? In your final draft, and you will submit that draft on Saturday, October 30th. And then I will put a letter grade on that paper. And I wanted to show you what is the letter grade I'm going to put on that paper. So let me open that file up. And here's the grading scale that I'm going to use for the paper. So let me share the screen, and here's the grading scale. So what do you need to do to get an A paper? Okay, to get an A excellent paper, the paper should be good grammatically and stylistically. It doesn't have to be perfect English, but I should be able to understand what you're trying to state, even if you don't use the preposition or to correctly, okay? The paper should contain no factually wrong statements. If you say that Abraham Lincoln was president of the United States, was the first president of the United States, I can't give you an A, because Abraham Lincoln was not the first president of the United States, right? So there should be no factually wrong statements. And you should also not make any kind of claim or statement that you don't support with evidence. In academic writing, any claim you make, you have to support with evidence, because any claim you make, you claiming is true, is the truth. And you have to persuade me that it's the truth. And the way you try to persuade me that it's the truth is by providing evidence to support that statement or support that claim. And that means citing scholarly evidence, citing the Zinn book. Give me the page number where that information that you are using from the Zinn book to support your thesis or your claim is located in the book, so that I can check it, okay? You support your thesis through full use of all assigned course reading and research material. If you claim also that Moon Jae-in made some kind of statement, let's say you're going to talk about Moon Jae-in liking Howard Zinn more than he likes Daniel Flynn to teach history, and you say Moon Jae-in is a populist who appeals to Korean national, you have to somehow provide me some evidence for that. Okay, evidence including, for example, a news report, a statement that he made that you provide in a citation, right? I have to do the same thing that I'm asking you to do. When I write papers, I have to, every time I make a claim or a statement, I have to support it with evidence, right? So you can do additional research, and we already said in the class you can do additional research. That's okay. But you have to. The idea is you're trying to persuade your reader that what you're writing is the truth. And so I can't just take your word that you think that Moon Jae-in is a Korean nationalist. You have to give me some evidence. So you use and cite information from at least 3 different chapters from what is it? Chapters 1 through 12 of the Zinn textbook. So that's, of course, 3 different chapters from chapters 1 through 12 of the Zinn textbook. And then to get an excellent paper has some interesting statement or insight that is new to me. I mean, when I read, the ideal is I read the paper and the writer, the student makes a statement or proves a statement or makes an assertion with evidence supporting it that is insightful. Like, wow, that's really interesting, I say to myself. If I say that to myself, I'm going to give you an A. A B paper is just a good summary. You use and cite information from 3 different chapters, from chapters 1 through 12. You summarize the information, and that's okay. Now, the problem happens when students do not use and cite information from at least 3 different chapters, from chapters 1 through 12. If you only use information from 2 chapters and cite that information from 2 chapters, the highest grade you're going to get is a C+. Okay. And, I have to be pretty rigorous about this because, I can't give everybody A's and B's in this class. And so you can just imagine what for the other grades. So that's, I'm going to post that on the website, on the course Cyber Campus website. So just so you know that that's the criteria. Now, in terms of citing your sources, there are a lot of different ways to cite sources. There are different formats and styles. I don't really require students to follow any particular one style. Let me close these files here from the other class. You can choose whatever style you want, but just so you know that there are different styles for citation. So for example, I told you, I just submitted a paper for consideration for publication on Friday last week. And that journal requires that the writers use what's called the Chicago style, named after the University of Chicago. And so this is the Chicago Manual Style Citations. This is, they tell you, this is specific format you have to follow for your references list and your how you organize your references list and how you do the in-text citations. So for example, you just put the last name of the author. If there's one single author for the book or the article, you put the last name of the author, the year of publication of that journal article or book, and the page where it's located. And then at the bottom, you find, well, then at the reference list, you find the whole reference entry here, as like this, okay? That's the Chicago style, but there are other styles. But I'm just showing you that this journal that I write articles for, that I submit articles to, they require that their writers use a Chicago Manual style, but different journals use different styles. And Chicago style is one. There's other styles as well. I'll show it to you what the other styles are. Here is, I think, something I downloaded from on the website. There's a Chicago style. There is the, what is this? This is the, yeah, okay, here's the Chicago Manual style. Here's the American Psychological Association style format. And it's a little bit different from the Michigan style, but this is probably even more popular than the Chicago style, this American Psychological Association style. So you can see they're a little bit different in terms of how you do it. And then there's the Modern Language Association, which is the for English teachers and professors of English language. Their style is a little bit different. I don't care which one you use, but I'm just want to show you there are styles. But one of the things I wanted to highlight, you don't need to put the entire reference each time you cite a source, cite this Howard Zinn book or any source. You need to put inside your body of your paper Howard Zinn, People's History of the United States, you just put Zinn page number, Zinn page number, Zinn page number. One word, Zinn. And then if you do use other sources, you use the name of the author of that other source. But for the school textbook, for our class textbook, it's Zinn, obviously, right? And so I'm just going to show you that there are different formats. And if you go further, like to graduate school in particular, you're going to have to learn these formats. One of these formats, you have to follow these formats, maybe even before that. If you, yeah, definitely though, if you're going to go to graduate school in Korea or anywhere, you're going to have to focus more on following a style. And your school will tell you typically what kind of style you need to follow. Just to show you, there are different, this is the University of Purdue. They have a lot of online information references for how to cite sources. Okay. You know, if you have questions, you can always ask. And okay, so let's go back to the class and do our exercises. So let me open up the files I started sending out. Let me see. What is there anything else I have to talk about? Yeah, that's the wrong one. Sorry. Close that. Go to documents here. Lesson plan. And okay, so share screen and go back to okay, so here's the lesson plan. So like I said, nobody signed up for week 7, but you know, we will have a debate on Friday. I'm sorry, on Wednesday in the class on the topic: the South Koreans' American expansion all the way to South China Sea shows the internal class conflict and external imperialist expansion have a close causal relationship. Let's now move a little bit to discussion of class conflict in the United States. And so I'm going to open up a file and start opening up the files I distributed last class. So to tell as we continue to tell our story of the development of the United States, the Civil Wars happened, the North won, which really wasn't a surprise in the sense that the prevailing dominant view among people that study history is that the North was so overwhelmingly powerful in terms of its industrial and economic and resources that it was inevitably going to win. I mean, it was much more economically industrialized than the South. But with the South being defeated, the commitment of the United States to those industrial interests, emphasizing the new modern industrial economy, became more of a focus of the US government. The US government was focused on the winning powers, economic powers of the Civil War, which were the Northern industrialists and the farmers that wanted land to feed the working classes in the factories of those Northern industrialists. And it was implied in that file that I showed you, I mean, that video clip I showed you, you know, these industrialists, they wanted to make a lot of money. And after well, even before the Civil War, but after the Civil War, with the South agricultural interests committed to traditional parochial plantation agriculture being defeated, the industrialization of the US skyrocketed and made the US, by the end of the 19th century, the biggest economic power in the world, passing Great Britain. The United States didn't have a big army, it didn't have a big navy, but everybody could see that America was becoming the biggest economy in the world. And that attracted lots and lots of people coming from poor places in Europe and also in Asia, Koreans included, at the end of the 19th century, to come to America and work in this booming economy. And so, for example, let me show you again another file that shows the booming industrialization in the United States right after the Civil War. So here you see I want to show you a video clip. I'm not a video clip, a sketch of these workers on strike. So here you can see this is just 3 years after the Civil War is over. So this is 1868, and you can already see these industrial workers working inside the textile mills, that make clothes, right? Make cloth for clothes. This is just 3 years after the Civil War is over. So industrialization skyrockets with the full support of the American government to make America an industrialized country and emphasize those economic interests. And so let me close that. And remember, the people that wrote these exercises that we're using in class, and that are and Howard Zinn as the author of your book, they're really fascinated with the labor movement, reflecting their socialist Marxist perspective. They're interested in classes and class conflict, and that's been a theme throughout the course. And so they argue that the labor movement to organize these workers who are going into these factories, coming from many different countries as first-generation immigrants from Germany, from Ireland, from Italy, from Portugal, from France, from Ukraine, from Eastern Europe, from Ukraine, Jewish, Orthodox, Catholic, not Protestants, not white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, people coming speaking different languages, who often do not know English, who worship God in different ways from what your Americans are familiar with. And this process is continuing. But I think one of the points that the authors of the Zinn book and the exercise want to highlight is that this labor movement actually played a critical role in creating the American national identity, that the labor movement in the United States was a critical factor in creating Americans out of all of these different people coming into North America from around the world. And, I think these include my family. I don't know when my mother's side of the family came to America from England and Germany and Denmark, but my father came to the United States in 1960, but his grandfather had come to America at about this time in 1912 and worked for several years in the United States and then went back to Italy. That's a point that's often not mentioned in a lot of this literature, that almost a third of the people that came to America to work and make some money went back to their home country and made some money, and they went back to their home country. And that process still continues today also, with people coming from Mexico and elsewhere, coming to America, sending money back to Mexico or El Salvador or Haiti. And if they don't marry, if they don't make a family in America, you find that they often go back home. So my great-grandfather, when he came with his brothers to America, he was already married. He had a wife in Italy, but he came to America to make some money because they were so poor. And he was faithful to his wife. And so he worked for several years, and his brothers worked for several years. And then they went back to Italy. And this would be important because when my father, who was born right before World War II, became a man, an adult, he didn't have much economic opportunity in Italy. So his father, my grandfather, or the son of my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my father's father, pushed my father to go to America. And he pushed him to go to America because my family already had friendship and ties and networks that they had built up 100 years earlier in Ohio, in the United States, where I'm from. So my father already had, you can say, a support network of people that knew our family, knew our village where my family was from, Capitignano in Italy, in Abruzzo, outside of Rome. They knew the family, they had ties with them, and so they supported my father while my father found his first job, his first work. And the Catholic priests played an important role in helping my father find his first job. My father couldn't speak English. My father just had a high school education, and he got a job working for a construction company in Ohio, where a lot of the people that worked there were Italians. The owner was Italian. There are a lot of Italians worked there, and they all spoke Italian language. So my father could work there without having to speak English at first. Of course, he then learned English, but he could work and it was a difficult job, but it paid well. And it paid well in part because it was a unionized it was a unionized company. In other words, the people that worked for this company were part of a union, Bricklayers and Allied Craftsmen Union, which is part of the AFL-CIO, which is one of the major labor organizations in the United States. And my father was able to make enough money to have a middle-class lifestyle and take care of his children, me and his other children, to send us to college. And that, of course, was not only because he found a job, but because he was paid decently because of the labor movement. And my father was something of a labor activist when he was here in America. I'm not here in Korea, but in America. And he paid a price for it in his efforts to organize and continue to support the union in that company. And he was punished. And he was punished by not being given work. And so my father responded by starting his own business, making pizza. And so he opened a pizza restaurant, Shikdang, for pizza. I think it was in 1968. When I was a small child, they opened a pizza restaurant, which still exists. It was sold 20 years ago, but it still exists with my dad's name on it, my father's name on it. And he made a significant sum of money. He claimed that pizza restaurant paid for my college education. And then he went back and continued to work in construction for that company. But the point I'm trying to make is that because he was pushed out for a time to punish him for his labor union activities, pushed him to do something else, which further made economic progress for us. And so that's a very typical American story, that the labor union in America, the labor movement in America, created a middle class out of workers. That if you want to explain the existence of a middle class in America, we have to include the relatively effective labor movement. And that's interesting because at the height of the labor movement in the 1950s, about 1/3 of American workers belonged to unions. So 33% of all people working as in companies as employees belong to labor unions. Today, 70 years later, that number is down to about 7%. 7%. And many people have made that argument. Many observers have made the argument that the rise of Donald Trump, to explain the rise of white anger and white grievance, European American grievance, because now everybody who's white in America, they might have Italian or Irish or German history, but they all consider themselves white. And they are the main source. White anger, white nationalism is the main source of grievance and support for Trump. And that some argue that the decline in the labor movement and the breakup of the unions and the decline in the union in the labor movement is got to be part of an explanation as to why more and more white people support Trump. That they're angry, and they're blaming Black people, and they're blaming Hispanic people, and they're blaming immigrants for their suffering. And of course, that's just scapegoating. That's simplistic. America's benefited from immigration. America became rich and prosperous because of massive immigration of people from all over Europe and then from Asia. But people look for simplistic explanations, and there are always political figures like Donald Trump that offer them simplistic explanations that they can understand in terms of, I don't like people who don't look like me. They're the cause of my problems, my insecurity. But there had been a history of overcoming these conflicts between Protestants and Catholics, Southern Europeans versus Northern Europeans in the history of the labor movement. And there was a relatively radical labor movement in the United States, and that was the industrial workers of the world. And it still exists. And they have a website. The Industrial Workers of the World has a website. You can go look at it. And they were you would call them a communist movement. They weren't just a labor movement. They were a communist workers movement. They were radical. And at one point, they were the most important labor movement in the United States, the most important labor union movement in the United States. And then very quickly, they would almost disappear. But this exercise is about the rise of the most radical labor trade union organization in the United States that at one point was the most influential labor movement in the United States. So I sent this to you already. It says here, you are the industrial workers of the world. The year is 1912. So it's 110 years ago. New industries based on new kinds of machinery, new ways of organizing work, and more use of skilled, unskilled, and foreign-born workers are flourishing. So the kinds of technology that's developing now is mechanistic, routine work that does not require skill. You just need to do repetitive, unskilled work serving the machines that are, for example, making cloth. You don't have to be a skilled tradesman. You don't have to learn skills. You don't have to be a journeyman. Like my father, when he came to America, he didn't work in this kind of factory. He worked in a stonemasonry business. And that took years of training for him to be able to become skilled enough to be in charge of doing that kind of construction work that required skilled experience and knowledge. But this is a different kind of work. This is working in these massive factories that are growing up with assembly line functions where the workers really don't have to think very much. They just have to work hard and they do the same kind of physical activity over and over and over and over again. And so these people, since they're not skilled, they're easy to replace. And they don't have to speak English, or you can hire them and somebody who will oversee them does speak English as well as their language of those people that you recruit from Italy or Ukraine or Serbia or Greece. Those people can talk to the factory manager, but the factory manager basically tells them what to do. But you can hire these people and they don't have to speak English. And there are lots of these poor, desperate people all over the world. So it's easier if you're a factory owner to pay low wages because there's no shortage of workers that you can find around the world. And so they will go all over the world recruiting people from Europe and also Asia to come work in these factories. So new industries based on new kinds of machinery, new ways of organizing work, and more use of unskilled and foreign-born workers are flourishing. Most established labor unions, such as those in the American Federation of Labor or American Federation of Labor here, AFL, it now is part of, together with the Congress of Industrial Organizations. So AFL-CIO is the main, one of the main labor organization representatives in the United States. They have not tried, the AFL has not tried to organize unskilled workers. They typically focused on skilled workers, carpenters, butchers, stonemasons. But one has, the Industrial Workers of the Union, the IWW. This is the first labor union that is focusing on organizing unskilled labor. You are a member of this union. You feel strongly that, let me see, I'll make this bigger. You feel strongly that the IAWW is the only union with a future because it understands what's really going on in this country. As you see it, the other major labor federation, the AFL, is living in the past. It's from a time when most work was done by craftsmen owning their own tools. Each trade was difficult and required lots of skill and time to learn. So, you know, a carpenter, was hired as a carpenter, and the carpenter brought his own tools to work. But this is a different kind of work now in these factories in 1912, which you're just basically physical labor running the machines. When there was conflict between skilled workers and owners, the craftsmen formed trade unions to protect themselves. Those unions were based on a particular craft, like shoemakers, carpenters, bricklayers, and the like. But times have changed. The hand tool has almost disappeared. Instead, there are huge factories with machines run by workers who don't own their own tools and have little control over how the workers perform. Ownership has only changed. Now, an individual factory may be only one of many controlled by the same owners. Yet the AFL craft unions, like the Carpenter Union, the Bricklayers Union, and so on, continue as if nothing has changed. They would still organize craft by craft. In your view, this divides workers and lets the owners play one craft or one factory against another. For instance, when workers in one factory go on strike, the owners simply increase production elsewhere. The IWW, on the other hand, believes in the idea of one big union, and you think that the IWW is right. All workers, skilled and unskilled, native born in America, in other words, and foreign born in Korea, China, Ireland, Italy, so on, men and women should be in the same union. In your mind, it's time to stop this nonsense of organizing only skilled American-born men. You, like what Big Bill Hayward, one of the most famous IWW members says, the AFL organizes like this, separating his fingers as far apart as they can go, naming the separate crafts: carpenters, bricklayers, shoemakers, leather workers, butchers, bakers, fletchers, whatever. The IWW organized like this, making a tight fist and shaking it at the bosses. Remember, this is the first time we've seen this in America. There are other important differences between the IWW and the AFL craft unions. The AFL wants just a little bigger piece of the pie. Higher wages, shorter hours, improved conditions. That's all the AFL is after. You IWW members see these goals as short-sighted. For you, working people's problems will only begin to be solved when workers take over all of the workplaces and run them together for the benefit of everyone, not just for the private profit of the owners. That's communism. The workers seize control of the means of production, the factories. The workers control the factories. As long as owners run industry for themselves, there will be continual conflict between them and the workers. You believe that all wealth is produced by the workers, so all wealth should be controlled by the workers. What do your owners produce? That's pretty radical. Thus, the IWW's goal is not only for higher wages or shorter hours, but also to improve the whole society. Workplaces in all of society should be run by the people who produce, the people who do the work. That's a pretty radical statement. And so then we go to the next file that I sent out to you. And let me see if I can find it here. Okay. So let me get this set up here and make that bigger and stop share and share screen and go here. Close that one. Close that. Close that. Let me go one second here. I gotta find the file so it opens up. And here we go here. Okay, so going on. So you can see this is a poster for the IWW, one big union of all the workers. However, as you came to know the IWW people better, you saw they run their organization in a way that actually teaches people to be leaders and thinkers. So the trade union movement, the Zinn and his supporters argue that the trade union movement taught people how to be citizens. It taught people how to be part of civil society. It taught people to become leaders in their communities, in their neighborhoods, and in their factories. But because remember, as we said earlier, 80% of my social life, 80% of your social life is connected with your career. Like right now, right? All of my social interaction with anybody during the pandemic is pretty much related to my career, my economic existence as an employee of the Catholic University of Korea. And so teaching people how to be leaders, teaching people how to make their communities better is going to also focus on what can they do for the rights of workers, to protect the interests of workers. And Americans, they take, I think this is a theme in the Zinn book and in his supporters' outlook. American students college students and high school students need to be reminded that all of these benefits that they take for granted as workers, they were fought for, they were struggled for. The notion of a minimum wage, for example. Where did it come from? Did the government just decide, oh, we feel bad, everybody should have minimum wage? No, it had to be fought for. It had to be struggled for. There had to be political struggle to achieve things like, for example, fundamental health regulations and protections in the workplace. These didn't exist in the 19th century. These had to be created for the first time by these people, these activists, these people who struggled and established this principle that factory owners, the bourgeoisie, cannot do whatever they want to do. There are limits to how they can treat their workers. There are obligations in terms of the money they have to spend and resources they have to spend to take care of their workers, that there is a fundamental, legitimate control that the government exercises over private property, over capital, over money. You can't do with your money whatever you want to do with it when it involves other human beings as your employees. And that's, that's a radical notion. This is an idea that didn't exist 150 years ago. It's my money. I create a factory. I hire you. I make an offer to you. I'm going to pay you this amount of money. You don't like it? Don't work for me. Go work for somebody else. I don't care. You don't like what I'm offering you? Leave. That was the mindset. And that's the mindset in a lot of people still to this day in America, that, big government is bad. Big government should not interfere in the economy. But when the government does regulate and restrain the treatment of people as employees by their employers, by business, that's intervention in the economy. That's limiting the freedom of private property and the freedom of capital property owners. And that goes against the foundation of the United States 200 years earlier than 1912, right? By people who came to North America and they wanted to do whatever they wanted to do to make money, including enslave people, non-Christians in America, the indigenous people, to bring enslaved people from Africa. I want to do whatever I want to do in this land where there's so much resources to make money. And I do not want the government telling me what to do. And that still is the principle of the American Creed, right? The American Creed is freedom of economic activity, limited government intervention. And now we're having this being challenged with the labor movement, labor union movement, the labor movement. And this is what we call today social capital, right? The labor union movement creates leadership, creates institutions within society and leaders for those institutions that constitute what we call today civil society. It's also called social capital, that these people who were coming from European countries, different religions, cultures, they learned how to be citizens through the labor movement. They learned how participating in elections is necessary in order to protect their interests as workers. That why should you care about elections? Because the government adopts policies that can determine how capitalists treat their employees. And so you should participate and pay attention to and participate in politics and in elections because of your career, your social existence as an economic actor, as an employee. But you have to be taught this. You have to learn this. You don't just realize it. So, however, as you come to know the IWW people better, you saw that they run the organization in a way that actually teaches people to be leaders and thinkers, social capital. The IWW halls have libraries. Workers hold classes to teach one another. They put on plays and sing together, right? Solidarity, and that includes emotional gratification, You've got to feel like being a member of the IWW gives you a sense of happiness in a world in which you're working 60, 70, 80 hours a week in the factory. Most importantly, the IWW also insists that all members participate in making decisions in the organization. And the AFL, the American Federation of Labor, seems to be afraid of strikes. The IWW isn't. What better learning experience could there be than a confrontation between capitalists and workers? A strike allows the IWW to show workers that the capitalist class and the working class have nothing in common. Strikes are an important chance for workers to learn that they can trust each other and make decisions together. The IWW is more than an organization. It's a social movement. One of the slogans of the IWW is, we must form the structure of the new society in the shell of the old. You and the IWW don't believe in the idea of follow the leader. Your goal is for every union member to be a leader. So, by the way, I should mention that the IWW is a small organization, right? I mean, like I said, there's a website for the IWW. Maybe I can just very quickly show you this website. And I wanted to highlight how this is interesting because the IWW has been selected to represent game producers, game makers, programmers in Silicon Valley. So it came into the news recently because of its was selected. So let me share a screen here. So there you can see the Wikipedia site, and they've got a website. And so just to go to the website, oh, look at that. One big union. That's really nice. But it's a small organization. But it became well known because I think it should be covered here. Let me go to the end here. It should be listed here. The IWW was selected to represent workers in gaming industry who are writing code for video games, an emerging field. So, and I'm trying to find. Well, I'll let you go through and read that on your own. I don't want to spend time on it now. But okay, so back to. I think, by the way, I think what's going on here is that with the popularity of the Howard Zinn book and these exercises I'm showing you in class, we're using in class, it's having some kind of impact around the world because now there's more and more interest in the IWW, which I don't think existed really until the Howard Zinn book became really popular. And the exercises that go with that book. So here you see academic scholarship having an impact on reality. So back to the okay, so let's just move on to this here. The strike is on. So Lawrence, St. Lawrence, Massachusetts. Work conditions in Lawrence, Massachusetts were undergoing the same kinds of changes occurring in industries across the United States. In the 1880s, the mill owners brought in new machinery and lowered wages. They began to recruit immigrants from Europe. At first, they brought in just one nationality. Then, to keep the workforce divided, another and another. So if workers can't talk to each other because you have Ukrainians working with Italians, working with Germans, and they can't speak English, it's difficult to organize them. To make the work seem attractive, they sent postcards to different parts of Europe that showed workers leaving the mills carrying bags of money on their way to the bank. By 1912, there were dozens of different ethnic groups in Lawrence, speaking almost 30 different languages, Italian and Polish, Ukrainian and Yiddish. Yiddish is the language of European Jews, Portuguese and French. This Massachusetts city now produced more cloth than any other city in the country, and yet workers couldn't afford to buy jackets. Malnutrition was common. So children of these workers didn't have enough to eat because they weren't paid enough to buy enough food for them. Housing was crowded and lacked light and sanitation. Life expectancy of a Lawrence worker was 22 years less than that of a factory owner. Because of low wages, Entire families had to work in the mills. So once a child was old enough to speak and work, that child was sent to the mill. He didn't go to school. He went to the mill. And everybody in the family had to work to make enough money to support the family. Of the more than 30,000 workers, half were teenagers. In fact, one half of the children in Lawrence between 14 and 18 years old worked in the mills. A small percentage of the workers had better paid skill jobs. The AFL Craft Union had 208 members. While as, of course, there were 30,000 workers in these factory mills. It did not have a contract with the owners. The AFL did. Not one mill owner lived in Lawrence. Profits were rising and the pace of work was continually increasing because the technology is increasing, right? In 1905, the owners decided that each worker in the woolen mills would operate 2 looms, machine looms, instead of 1. In the cotton mills, every worker now tended 12 different machines at once. Supervisors pressured women workers for dates and to provide sexual favors. These are all kinds of stories we hear today. We're working too hard. We've got too much to do. Amazon warehouse, we have to produce 80 different picks a minute. We're under too much pressure. And of course, supervisors are pressuring women and sexually harassing women. They were abusive and disrespectful of foreign-born workers. Water in the mills was so contaminated by the heat and dust that it was undrinkable. Supervisors sold bottled water to profit. The company paid part of the workers' wages on what was called the premium system. That is, this meant that any worker who was sick for more than 1 day a month or failed to produce the amount set by the supervisor because his or her machine broke, for instance, lost the premium. Since skilled workers received their premium according to the production of the unskilled workers under them, they also pressured unskilled workers and played favorites. Again, you still see this going on today in different places. The usual work week was 56 hours. Concerned about health conditions, the state legislature passed a law limiting work hours for children and women to 54 hours, 6 days a week, 9 hours a day. Immediately, the owners saw a way to take advantage of this reform. They sped up the work yet again, so that the same amount of cloth was produced in 54 hours as had been produced in 56 hours. Now the question was, would the workers' pay be lowered? Would they be paid less for 54 hours, not 56? Since housing costs weren't going down, any pay cut would simply mean less to eat. On January 12th, workers opened their pay envelopes to find a pay cut, since they're only working 54 hours. After a few stunned seconds in desperation, somebody yelled, "Strike!" Okay, so let me stop that share and go to the next file. And okay, so here we're going to start doing some kind of an exercise to keep you focused here. And so let me make this a little bit bigger. Let me share the screen. Okay, so here you see getting organized. Okay, so here are the 6 different questions. So we'll divide you into 4 different groups. To address these questions. So there are a number of different mills in Lawrence on strike. This involves over 30,000 workers. So there's a number of different factories that involves over 30,000 workers. Many different ethnic groups are represented in Lawrence. Lots of different languages are spoken, and there are a number of cultures in the city. There's different people from different countries, so they have different cultures, different languages, different religions, different churches, different restaurants, different bars. The question is, how is the strike going to be led? Who will decide how to organize, negotiate? What demands of the strike what the demands of the strike should be, what taxes to use, whether to end the strike, etc. So how are you going to get organized? You're so desperate, you're going to go on strike. And remember, you always know or were afraid that the factory owner would fire you. But you are so desperate, you have to do something. It goes on here. Many of the workers in Lawrence are illiterate. People speak a number of different languages. There are thousands of people involved in the strike in more than one factory. The question is, specifically, what kind of organizational structure should we use throughout the strike? Should you try to decide things through large meetings involving all of the striking workers? Or should those striking workers elect representatives rotate the leadership, or some other method? All of these questions have to be decided. It's never been decided before, so you can't really rely upon anybody to tell you how to do this. But if you get organized today, if you're an unhappy worker in an Amazon factory, like in Alabama, there was a vote early this year on whether or not to organize an Amazon distribution center in Alabama. And the trade union leaders, activists, the trade union organizations can send individuals to these factories and tell them and explain to them what they need to do to get organized, how to do it, what are the rules, what are the practices, how you're successful. And that's great. But at this time in 1912, people don't know anything about how to do this. They've never done this before. They can't even speak English. A lot of them. Third question, how should any meetings be held? How should any meetings be run? How should we run any meetings we hold? And who should hold these meetings? Question 4, how can we make sure that we keep the strikers unified? Because of course the factory owners and the managers are going to try to divide the workers against each other. They're going to offer some workers some benefits if they break the strike and go back to work. They're going to threaten people that if they don't go back to work, they'll never be hired. They'll never get a job anywhere in Lawrence again. And you're a desperately poor person. Where you came from poverty, you have to feed your children. With thugs hired by management, the ticket line can be dangerous, and some people feel the picket line is the line that workers have when they march with their signs, right? The picket line can be dangerous, and some people feel that it is no place for a woman. These workers point out that women are not even allowed to vote in national or local elections, so women can't even vote yet at this time. Should women be allowed to participate in the strike? And if they should be allowed to participate in the strike, in what kind of capacity? Remember, women are working in the factories, but they can't vote. And finally, there have been charges in the newspapers that some of the strikers are illegal immigrants, people who are in the United States illegally, who came to this country only in order to send money home. What should we do about these people? Of course, that's a big topic today in America. Same issues, same fears, same conflicts are still present in America as millions of people come into the United States trying to make a better life for themselves and their children. So there are 6 different questions. Let's divide you into 6 different groups. So group 1 will deal with question 1. Group 2 will deal with question 2. Group 3 will deal with question 3. Group 4 will deal with question 4. Group 5 will deal with question 5. And group 6 will deal with question 6. So let me stop share and go back to breakout rooms and make you into 6 different rooms, assign automatically, and the top person in each group will speak for each group. And so join your groups, your 6 different groups. So room 1 deals with question 1. Room 2 deals with question 2. Come up with an answer. Room 3 deals with question 3. Room 4 deals with question 4. Room 5 deals with question 5. And room 6 deals with question 6. So please join your groups, join your question groups, and join your groups. And the top person in each group will speak for the group. And again, these are the 6 questions. Come up with an answer. Question 1, question 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I will come up with an answer. Heads is questions 1 through 3 for me. And it's heads. Heads is 1, and it's tails. Heads is 2, and it's 3. So how should any meetings we hold be run? By whom? Okay, so I'm going to deal with question 3. Uh, okay. Okay, so who's going to speak first? So let's flip a coin here. Heads is the question 1 through 3 will be answered first, and it's heads. So heads is question 1, and it's tails. So heads is question 2, and it's question 3. So question 3, and that means group 3. And let's go back to the screen share. Wait a second, I think I have to close that first. Okay, so we go to screen share, and close that, and stop share, go to screen share. Question 3 here. Okay, question 3. So group 3, how should any meetings we hold be run? How should the strikers organize their meetings? Who should organize them? Group 3?
This meeting must be run by skilled workers on strike. They have the right to negotiate with managers as the main agents of this strike.
So they should be experienced workers. They should be. We're not going to have new people who've never lived in the United States who just arrived from foreign countries. No, not first generation workers. We're going to have workers representing or organizing these meetings of the strikers who are experienced workers who also have seniority. You're saying that they have to be older workers with lots of experience. Yes.
Yes, experienced workers.
And they have to speak English, obviously, right? My question is, are these people that are organizing and running these meetings of the thousands of strikers at these different factories? Because there's a lot of different factories. And overall, the whole total of all the workers in these many factories are over 30,000 people who are now on strike. So you have these factories organizing these meetings. So these meetings should be organized by experienced senior workers who are respected. Should they be elected? So each firm, each factory, they should elect someone to organize these meetings and run these meetings and be the chairperson of these meetings. How are you going to select these people? You have to elect them, don't you? Don't you have to elect these people? If you work in a factory with 2,000 people working in that factory, how are you going to choose who's going to run the meeting? You're going to have an election for that? Yes, no, there's no right or wrong answer. I just want your thoughts.
Election would be necessary.
Yeah, and so
There's
somebody
too
who
many
obviously
people.
has a good reputation, somebody who has experience, somebody who's liked, right? So somebody has built up a reputation of being smart, that can speak well. So they're probably going to be people also that speak, obviously, who speak English well, right? But my point is, are these same people who are going to organize the meeting of these striking workers in each different factories, in each factory with hundreds or thousands of workers, are they also therefore going to be the people that are going to represent those workers in that factory when they negotiate with the factory owners and management? So the same people that are going to represent the workers in negotiations with the factory owners and the managers are the same people that are going to chair and run the meetings of the workers in the factory. Yes or no? Or maybe?
Maybe yes.
Yeah.
Maybe no. Yes.
Yeah, well,
yes.
I mean, you're going to see the detail. I mean, this is a lot of work. These people are working. They have been working, now they're going to be responsible for organizing these meetings. And then they also have to then take the information from these meetings and you have to elect them to represent the workers. So they're going to become the elected representative of the workers that are negotiating with the factory managers and factory owners. And so they're going to have to be people that you trust, because they have to use their judgment. They have to use their minds. They have to negotiate. So they have to be people that have a good reputation. They have to have people that also have a reputation for being smart and good people. You trust them. So if the factory has, let's make it a big factory. Let's say this factory has 1,000 people working in it. How many representatives are you going to have for that 1,000 workers? 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many? You've got to decide, right? But you're certainly probably going to have more than one. And so this is something else you have to decide in organizing this strike that's involving several different companies in Lawrence. There's company A, company B, these are private companies that run that own these textile mills. So you have to come up with some kind of agreement among all of these factories as to the rules of organization of this big strike. How many representatives come from each factory based upon the number of people that work in that factory. Some factories might be smaller than others, might be bigger. There has to be some kind of rules about the entire industry in Lawrence, covering all of the workers in all of the factories in these different companies. So you need to talk and communicate with each other. And this is before telephones, right? This is before, and so you're going to communicate with each other. You've got to go walk and talk to these people. You have to find them. You have to find them, meet them where they gather. Remember, they're not in the factory because they're on strike. So they're trying to close the factory or they're trying to occupy the factory. It's a stressful situation. It's a conflictual situation. The owners are hiring private security guards and thugs to beat people up. How are you going to find a place to negotiate, communicate with each other? You're probably going to have to go to places where workers meet outside of work. You can talk to them on the picket line, and you might even try to talk to them if they're occupying the factory. Like they're in the factory and they're saying, "This is ours. We're not leaving. We're not working." But that's difficult to discuss and negotiate and come up with plans. So where are you going to find these people? Where do you think you're going to find these people outside of work to communicate and organize them? Where are you going to find them? You know, you just don't want to say it. Churches and bars. That's where. Churches and bars. Shikdan, hofs. Is where we're going to have to find these people. Now, the churches might be a problem because the churches, they are nervous about being associated with political activity. Maybe they will help you. Some priests, some moksadul, some Catholic priests, some rabbis, maybe they will. But often where you're going to have to find these people is where these workers meet when they're not working. Remember, this is before television. This is even before radio. So if people want to enjoy themselves, they have to enjoy themselves by talking and meeting with other people because they don't have radio, not to mention telephone, not to mention internet, right? So social life is really important for these people because that's where you get some kind of pleasure and enjoyment out of life by entertaining each other face to face. So that means bars and restaurants. And of course, these workers, they drink a lot because that's what you do in a shikdan and a hof. After working 9 hours a day, 6 days a week, doing repetitive, unskilled labor, you're going to drink a lot of beer or whatever you drink. And so you will find that will be a place, those will be a very important places for organizing the workers. And it will be also an important place for organizing political campaigns that are seeking to get the workers' votes in elections. So if you're a politician who wants to win the elections and these workers are going on strike or these workers are unhappy, you want to talk to these workers. You're not likely to be able to talk to them in the churches because the churches are conservative. The churches and for the Christian church, they tend to be kind of conservative, right? Like churches here, big churches here in Korea. So you want to find places where you can talk to them, and that means you're going to go to the hofs, bars, restaurants, 식당s, where these workers go after they finish their work for the day. And that will be, and you know why that's important? Because this will scare the traditional white ruling powerful capitalists. And so it will be this tendency to rely upon bars and restaurants as places for political organization and political activity will be a target. They will become a target for closing them down. Closing down these hofs and 식당s, restaurants and bars. And so so in the 1920s, the Americans will pass the constitutional amendment. Think about this. The Americans will pass a constitutional amendment to ban the sale of alcohol, prohibition. I think it's the 18th Amendment of the United States Constitution bans the sale of alcohol. Now, why would the Americans ban the sale of beer and wine and alcohol? And the reason is because the hofs, a major reason is, not the only reason, but a major reason is because these hofs and taverns and bars are viewed by the powerful people in America as dangerous places of political activism. Also as places of corruption, that politicians will go to these bars and make deals with the customers, the clients in the bars, making deals for them to get their votes, including providing them with beer, providing them with food, providing them with money. So think about that. The American people would actually try to ban alcohol sales in one of the most bizarre social experiments that I don't think has been tried anywhere else in the world, to pass a constitutional amendment to abolish alcohol. And the reason is because of the trade union movement and its association with these 식당s, these bars, these hofs, these restaurants, and political organization, political activity. So if I go to, I think it's the 18th Amendment. So make sure you can see what I'm doing here. So just to show you. So here, US Constitution. Amendments. I'm looking for the 18th Amendment. Well, let me just do it like this, prohibition. So prohibition, and it's been done in other countries, but in terms of the United States, let's see, go to United States. Yeah, the 18th Amendment to the US Constitution. Prohibition in the United States focused on the manufacture, transportation, sale of alcoholic beverages. Exceptions were made for medicinal and religious uses. Alcohol consumption was never illegal under federal law. It's just the production and sale of alcohol was illegal. Nationwide prohibition did not begin in the United States until January 1920, when the 18th Amendment to the US Constitution went into effect. The 18th Amendment was ratified in 1919, was repealed in 1933 with the ratification of the 21st Amendment. So the 21st Amendment abolished the 18th Amendment. So, but that's certainly one of the major motivations for this bizarre. I mean, it's still difficult to consider. The Americans tried to ban the sale and production of alcohol. And of course, that gave a big a push to development of organized crime in the United States, because still, even though the 18th Amendment sought to ban the sale and production of alcohol, still became very profitable because people still wanted alcohol. So of course, whenever you make something illegal, you make it dangerous and very profitable. So organized crime emerged, got a big boost out of the illegal manufacture and sale of alcohol. Okay, so what did I write? I also had question 3, and I wrote, yeah, I think I wrote that the, let me go back to the questions here. I wrote, I think that the leaders of the meetings should be the negotiators of the workers with the factory owners and management. Therefore, they should be literate people who can also, of course, speak English. They should also be representative of the strikers, and meaning that they should be the designated representatives of the workers at the factory. So they should be elected, and because those who are elected will probably have a good reputation. Since each factory is very large, each factory should have more than one representative, and they should represent the ethnic communities that make up the factory workers. There should be an equal proportion of women representatives also representing the workers and running these meetings. So should women also be involved in running these meetings? Question 3. Maybe we'll leave that for the others because we're running out of time here. So let's, heads is question 1 or 2, and it's heads. So heads is question 1, and it's question 2. Okay, question 2, room 2. Many of the workers in Lawrence are illiterate. Should people speak a number of different languages? There are thousands of people involved in the strike in more than one factory. Question specifically, what kind of organizational structure should we use throughout the strike? Some possibilities include large meetings involving all the strikers, elected representatives, rotating leadership, or some other method. So question 2, what are your thoughts on answering this question?
The best way to embrace people from various cultures is to elect 2 representatives from the same country and within the same occupations. This is because when the country and occupations are the same, can they speak the same voice and become more united. And also, a group of meditators should be formed to coordinate the opinions of these representatives so that the meeting can be operated democratically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this ethnic issue, I mean, these conflicts are hard to overemphasize between Catholics and Protestants. Maybe among the workers, there's not this conflict, but like along with the prohibition of alcohol in the 1920s, the Ku Klux Klan, that terrorist white supremacy organization that emerged after the Civil War, will reemerge in power in the United States, in part in the early 20th century, in part because of the big influx of people coming from Catholic Europe and Orthodox Europe and Jewish Europe. Jews, Orthodox people from Ukraine and Russia, and Catholics from Italy, Orthodox people from Greece. And this would scare and make many traditional white Protestants hostile. And of course, that racism would still, I mean, between blacks and non-black people, will still be a very powerful factor dividing the working class movement. Even though, you know, these differences between Catholics and Protestants, Italians and Germans, that will be overcome. And how is it overcome? We know it's overcome because these people intermarry, right? You know, a son of a German immigrant marries a daughter of an Italian immigrant. But that's a much, much, much slower process between African Americans and white and European Americans. And my sense is that what we saw in terms of how the ethnic groups were more organized, the focus was more on elections for local city offices, would play a more important role in representing ethnic interests than these labor movement. The labor movement did a pretty good job of integrating Europeans with other Europeans because they're all considered white, but it came all to be considered white. But there was still this hostility to blacks. And I think it was partly because these poor white people from Europe are coming from Italy and Greece and Eastern Europe. And one way that they could feel better and feel like they were part of American society was by sharing this dislike and hostility to Black people. Because Black people were stereotyped, as the legacy of slavery. And that really becomes an important element for creating white America today. Okay, so let's go on here. So that's 2 and 3. So heads is question 1, and it's tails. So heads is question 4, and it's heads. So group 4, how can we make sure that we keep all these strikers unified when the management is threatening them and saying, if you don't go back to work, you're going to be fired. You're never get a job again here in Lawrence. We'll make sure that we'll give you a pay increase if you go to work and just ignore what everybody else is doing. How are you going to keep them unified? Question 4.
Yeah, we have to acknowledge the fact that these union workers, they are really putting their life on the line. I mean, not just economically, but also like literally their real lives, because we want to acknowledge that not only were the police involved in like putting them down, we've also found out that the police and the government are also working alongside with the Ku Klux Klan as well to put down our strikes, especially in Los Angeles area. So that we want to unify them in something a little bit more. I wouldn't put like some sort of let's say an idea. The Declaration of Independence wrote that, Jefferson wrote that all people are all free, all people have the right for liberty and for the pursuit of happiness. And that's what we're about. We're about the happiness. We're all about survival. And that's what we're trying to protect, our pursuit of happiness. And I think that's the most essential thing.
That's really important. And you're highlighting an important point. These social movements, whether it be the trade union movement or the civil rights movement 50 years later, or any of the movements, require that you think about appealing to broader public opinion. You have to have support from the broader public. And that means you have to make sure the broader public is not afraid of you. Because, and keep in mind, your opponents are describing you in demonic, diabolical terms, that you're evil, you're socialists, you're communists, you're anarchists, you're atheists, and so you're trying to work through the media. And again, the only media you really have at this point is the newspapers. So you're trying to work through the media, and you're trying to appeal to a broader public to support you or be sympathetic to you, to your demands. And so you have to use language like you just used about the Declaration of Independence, about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, about serving America and trying to make America strong, about trying to give a decent life to your people, and teach your children so your children don't have to work in the factory, but you make enough money so that your child can go to school instead of have to go to the factory. And if your child can go to school, your child will learn how to read and is less likely to become a criminal because they have an education. And you're using all of this kind of language to try to appeal to a broader public. You must appeal to a broader public, and to a broader public that is not as focused as you are on your cause, right? So they're just reading a newspaper, and they're reading, oh yes, there's a big strike. Oh, these people are on strike. Ooh, I don't know if I really like that. Oh, I don't know, man. Strikes, if they don't like working there, they should just leave. I mean, and you're trying to appeal to them when, of course, as I said, the rich and powerful people are also using the newspapers and paying the newspapers and people in the newspaper industry to describe you in bad, evil ways, the strikers in evil, bad ways. And so you often have to engage in symbolic activity. You carry lots of American flags, right? I mean, we have cameras, of course, people have cameras, they're taking pictures for publication newspaper. So you want to have lots of American flags showing how you're a patriotic American and your movement is trying to make America stronger and healthier and more prosperous for everybody. And that means keep in mind, you're being and this is true today, and it's true in the past. The owners, the rich, powerful, conservative forces are trying to provoke you. They want you to do something violent. They want you to do something violent that is then reported in the newspaper, that is reported in the media, so you look like violent, dangerous, radical, militant people. And in a country in which the typical American admires and respects the policeman and the soldier, and believes that the government is representative of the people through fair elections, and they admire and respect the police and the soldiery and the army. So if any of your members are provoked, let's say somebody secretly kills one of your members, and you think somebody in the police did it, and you take violence or retribution against that policeman, that police report is going, that killing of the police or the violence against the police is going to be all over the newspapers. Oh my God, these people are attacking the police. They're undermining the order of American society. Oh my God. And this is difficult to do, right? So you will see this in social movements later as well, that what we call Martin Luther King Jr. drawing upon the work of Mahatma Gandhi in India and others, that you have to engage in nonviolent resistance, civil disobedience, because you have to show how you are the morally ethical superior actor, even as the police use their clubs to beat you and bring their dogs to bark and bite you and use the fire engines with their hoses to spray you. You do not use violence back, that you are well dressed, you're very articulate, you sing songs, we shall overcome, we shall overcome, even as the police are beating you with these batons, and this is all being covered in by the cameras, right? And now everybody's a cameraman with video recorders, with videos recording on their phones, right? So this is all being recorded and being broadcast in the news media. So I'm going beyond question 4, but this is an important point. You also have to make sure that workers, there'll be some workers who are desperate, who are already desperate. Maybe they have lots of children they have to feed, and they cannot stay on strike very long because they need desperately the money to give some food to their babies. So you probably will have to come up with a strike fund, some kind of way to pay workers some minimum level of income while they're on strike, so they can continue to feed their children, feed their families while they're on strike and not being paid by their employer. So that's a common principle, right? You see in labor union organizations in the United States, they have strike funds set aside so that workers who are on strike can continue to receive some money to buy food for their kids. And that's partly to keep them unified. Sometimes you also have ugly elements of this, that you might involve informal coercive groups to pressure workers who don't want to cooperate by threatening to beat them up. And so this will play a role for the labor movement becoming somewhat vulnerable to organized crime enforcers. And there's always this tendency in the labor movement to rely upon some kind of unofficial mechanisms to, if you can't convince somebody with all the nice ways to convince them to stay unified, that you threaten them that if you don't continue to do what we want you to do, something bad's going to happen. And that will be a problem throughout the 20th century. And of course, keep in mind also that the managers and the owners are also hiring their own criminals, organized crime thugs, to beat up and break up strikes, just like we see around the world today. Okay, so heads is question 1, and it's tails. Heads is question 5, and it's question 6. Question 6. There have been charges in the newspaper that some of the strikers are illegal immigrants who came to this country only in order to send money home. What should we do about these people? Question 6. Question 6. Room 6.
Okay, so we think they are also workers too, so they have to be gotten equal treatment as workers or strikers. However, they are illegal immigrants, so we suppose that there would be a negotiation between the owners and the strikers.
Yeah, I mean, that of course, that question is put into this exercise because that's a very hot topic today everywhere in Korea and the United States. 100 years ago or 150 years ago, it was very easy to come to the United States. And if you came on a boat, you stopped at a harbor, and at the harbor, somebody would meet you, and you didn't even have, there was no such thing as a passport. There was no such thing as at that time, you just declared who you were, and the border guard, issued you a name, and I think you were just 100. I mean, I don't know what it was like 100 years ago, but it was very easy. The Americans were trying to encourage people to come to America and work in the factories because that's what the capitalists wanted. They needed workers to make money so they could run their factories to make money. If people came into America over land, like from Canada or Mexico, there really wasn't any kind of a check. They were coming and they found a job and they stayed and settled. This is a long time ago. This is before World War I. They came and they settled in America, and they typically got married and had a baby, had children, and those children were born in America. And those children, people born in America, were automatically Americans, according to the law of citizenship on the basis of birth and territory. So it's jus soli, that if you're born in America, regardless of the status of your parents, you're an American. You're automatically an American citizen if you're born on American territory. And so, grandfather or great-grandfather may have come to America without any kind of documentation, but it didn't really matter because his children or his grandchildren, they were born in America, and so that's it. This becomes more of an issue later in the 20th century as the Americans begin restricting immigration in the early part of the 20th century, and then as immigration increased and then immigration pressures increased. But keep in mind, these people are coming into America legally and illegally because they are wanted. They are important for the economy, and that's true. And that's true today. Again, I hate this term about rational and irrational, but anti-immigrant sentiment makes no sense when you think about, for example, the COVID-19 pandemic in America has highlighted the important role that undocumented immigrants, people who are in America without any kind of legal documentation, they do jobs that Americans don't want to do. The Koreans know as difficult, dirty, and dangerous work. So you find undocumented immigrants working, taking care of old people in nursing homes. And that's difficult work. You're dealing with people who can't take care of themselves, who can't go to the bathroom, who are dying, and they don't get paid very well. They don't get paid a lot of money. So you find lots of those people working in that kind of work. And so there's this xenophobic reaction today against these critical parts of the workforce in the American economy. But the problem is that you can find lots of people to take these jobs. So even though we call these people essential workers today in the COVID-19 pandemic, there are lots of people you can find to fill those essential jobs. So Americans have the luxury of scapegoating these people, even though at the same time they need these people. I mean, the cost of food in America would be much, much higher if you actually paid illegal workers, undocumented immigrants, a fair wage. Because if they're undocumented, it's easier to exploit them. You can exploit these people because they can't complain because they're not legally in the United States. So it's easier to exploit them. And that means somebody makes more money by exploiting these people who can't complain about their exploitation. And this has always been true, but the COVID-19 pandemic has really made this blatantly true to everybody. So even as people complain about so-called illegal immigrants, at the same time, lots of companies and rich people benefit and exploit these illegal immigrants, undocumented immigrants, because they're undocumented, it's easier to exploit them and pay them very little money. Okay, and so heads is question 1, and it is tails. So question 5, should women be allowed to participate in the strike? Question 5.
I think the women should allow to participate in the strike. At the time, women workers were in a low wage and poor environment. They also protest against long working hours. Also, the IWW believes in the idea of one big union, or workers, including women, should be in the same union. So I think the status of women may still be low at the time, but it will be necessary to start changing by participating in this strike.
Yeah, and that will be an important role for their ability to get the right to vote in 1920 with the 19th Amendment was adopted about the same time as the 18th Amendment. That women clearly are playing an important role in the economy, that they are and they are, showing their capacity to and struggling and fighting for the right to vote, and learning about how to struggle and fight for change in society through the labor movement and other kinds of activity. And it's not just leftist progressive efforts. It also involves some conservative leaders who are claiming that, they're trying to stand up for traditional female rights, that, that women should be at home taking care of the children, but they have to work because the labor movement, the workers are so exploited. So women should have the right to vote, so that the needs of homemakers, women who want to stay home and take care and raise the children, they can be represented in the political system. So you have those kinds of appeals also being made that are using traditional notions of women's needs. But keep in mind, women are learning how to be active in civil society as activists, as leaders, partly through the labor movement, even as they then use their experience to pressure the government to give women the right to vote. And this would be emphasized even further during the World War I, which will start in a few years, that you see lots of men go off into the army and women move into the factories, these big factories on a large scale. And also Black people also start coming from the American South to go work in these large factories as the white men are being drafted to go fight in World War I. And this will also have an impact on getting women, showing women's ability and need to participate in society and demanding the right to vote from politicians who are, politicians overwhelmingly think about what do they need to do to win elections. And again, so you have to get men on your side if you're a woman. You have to appeal to a broader audience in order to for your social movement to work. And so you have to talk in different ways, in conservative ways, and in progressive ways. And so that leaves question 1. How is the strike going to be led? Who will decide how to negotiate, what the demands of the strike should be, what tactics to use, whether to end the strike, etc. Group 1, question 1. What are your thoughts? Question 1.
Okay. I think forming groups by languages. Like each groups vote for their leaders. The leaders form a delegation, and they will. The delegation will demand improvement of working environment. They will demand gradual improvement, but before negotiating, they need to ask to workers if the workers agree with the idea the delegation negotiate with factory owners while the strike continues.
Okay. Yeah. You know, that, I mean, that's a fact. You're going to have to make somebody a leader. When you have over 30,000 workers, somebody is going to have to aggregate, bring together. Aggregate means bring together and articulate, express what these workers want. So again, you're going to have to form leaders, and leaders mean people you trust, because somebody has got to do the negotiations. And now they reach an agreement. That agreement, then how are you going to ratify that agreement? Are you going to have all 30,000 workers vote on ratifying any kind of agreement that they reach?
Sorry.
Yes?
Can you ask one
Yeah,
more?
are you going to have all of the workers on strike vote to approve or reject any kind of agreements that are reached?
Not all. I mean, like, they agree with the idea of delegation. Delegation make idea and they ask to the workers.
Well, that might be something that you would suggest. I would tell you, however, that my experience has been almost always labor unions, when they negotiate with management, they reach an agreement, and then all of the workers on strike have to vote on that agreement. That's true all of the time. That the workers have to then vote on whether or not to accept the contract, the labor contract, because the labor contract is the agreement. So, okay, we're running out of time, and so I want to let's see, what else do I want to send you? So, question 6 and 7, let me send you all. Go stop share and breakout room, create, close all rooms. Okay, so let me go ahead and just send you to everyone this file. And 6 and 7, 8, open. Also send you question 8. Also send you uh, 9. And also send you 10, 11. And also send you question 12. That tells you the history of what happened with the strike. You know, in the 1 minute remaining, you know, the strike, the IWW become very big, and then almost immediately after World War I ends, it pretty much collapses. The IWW almost disappears, and it disappears in part because there becomes great economic opportunity available to people, and also there's the Bolshevik Revolution happens in Russia, and the leaders of American society start becoming very suspicious of anybody who's talking in radical terms, like the IWW, that they might be serving the communists who are, you know, breaking down churches and killing aristocrats in Russia and kill the Russian royal family. And the Red Scare will emerge. The first anti-communist mania emerges in the United States after World War I. And so you will see that the trade union movement tends to be very conservative, politically conservative, even though they want democratic change, they want union rights. They're intensely anti-communist. And so so we'll come back to those files on Wednesday. Okay, that's it. Any questions? If not, I'll look at your paragraphs tomorrow and your essay, your midterms. If you haven't submitted them yet, I'll get those done this week. And see you on Wednesday. Bye.